Texas right now.
So more than just to escape the heat, I mean, are you running for president?
I am traveling the country, working to build a grassroots army. And the biggest fight facing Congress right now is the fight to defund Obamacare. We have between now and September 30th to win this fight. And the only way it will get done is if millions of grassroots activists mobilize. Under ordinary Washington rules, it can't get done. But if we see the American people rise up in incredible numbers and demand of their elected officials, both Republicans and Democrats, that they step forward to avoid this train wreck. And the wheels are falling off of Obamacare. It isn't working. It is hurting the Americans who are struggling the hardest. It is hurting the most vulnerable among us. It's hurting young people, Hispanics, African Americans, single moms. They're the ones losing their jobs. They're the ones finding their hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week. They're the ones seeing health insurance premiums skyrocket.
So you're here in Iowa to rule out running for president?
I am here and traveling across Texas and across the country working to help mobilize the grassroots, because I think this is the most important battle to restore economic growth, to get our economy booming again, to get small businesses back, to get jobs back, to help those struggling to climb the economic ladder have the best chance possible to achieve the American dream.
Mitt Romney was pretty critical of your efforts to fund Obamacare. What would you say to the statements he made? He said it could hurt the party come election time.
Well, there are lots of folks that can share their views. In my view, number one, there's bipartisan agreement Obamacare isn't working. Number two, this is the single best opportunity to defund it. If 41 Republicans stand together in the Senate, or if 218 Republicans stand together in the House, we can successfully defund Obamacare. And let me be clear what I think should happen. I think the House of Representatives should pass a continuing resolution that funds the entire federal government, funds every aspect of the federal government, except for Obamacare. And that continuing resolution should explicitly prohibit any federal government spending on Obamacare, either discretionary or mandatory. Now, the next step, we know how this play proceeds, is that Harry Reid and President Obama will scream and yell that the mean, nasty Republicans are threatening to shut down the government. And at that point, we've actually got to stand up and win the argument. We've got to make the case to the American people that no, we have voted to fund the government. We want to fund the entirety of the federal government. And if Barack Obama acts to shut down the government, that's his decision, and it raises the obvious question from the American people: why is President Obama threatening to shut down the federal government, to force Obamacare down the people's throats? Why is President Obama willing to grant waivers to giant corporations, willing to grant waivers to members of Congress, but he's willing to shut down the federal government to deny those very same waivers for hardworking American people? And I believe that is a fight we can win, because as the lead author, Democrat Senator Max Baucus in the Senate has described Obamacare, it is becoming a huge train wreck.
Are you worried about the RNC's decision to boycott debates held by MSNBC and CNN if they continue with the Hillary documentary and miniseries?
Oh, the RNC will make its own decisions. I don't think anybody is surprised to discover that the mainstream media are in love with Hillary Clinton. And indeed, I would expect both of those movies to be released on Valentine's Day. No one will be surprised. That is her base. It is the elite opinion in Washington, D.C. and New York City. And I think most Americans across this country are frustrated by the lack of economic growth. 4 consecutive years of, on average, less than 1%, 0.9% economic growth. There are millions of Americans struggling to find jobs, millions of young people, of Hispanics, of African Americans, of single moms who are finding their hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week. And at the end of the day, if Hillary Clinton chooses to run for president, she is going to find hosannas from the mainstream media. She is going to find hosannas from Hollywood. But I think the American people are going to want to know why we've seen 4 consecutive years of stagnant economic growth, of it becoming harder and harder for those struggling to climb the economic ladder to achieve the American dream.
But do you agree or disagree with the decision to then boycott the networks?
I think that's a decision for the chairman to make, and I think it underscores the hypocrisy of the media. That no sentient person believes those movies are going to be anything other than hagiography, anything other than, I expect the central debate in those movies to be whether she is eligible for sainthood now or if she can only be named a saint posthumously. At the end of the day, I'm not that worried about it. People understand that the mainstream media are supporting Hillary Clinton. That does not surprise most voters.
Senator, one of the knocks on you from one of your would-be rivals in 2016.
I'm impressed you can limit it to just one.
So far, is that we've seen this movie before. His name was Barack Obama. Articulate young senator, caught fire with the grassroots of his party, and look at what that's gotten us the last 6 years. What do you say to that critique, and where do you differ with President Obama? Not on policy, obviously, but just in terms of who you are and your background and your resume.
Well, let me say 2 things. Number one, my focus here today, and my focus every day in the Senate, is on standing up and fighting for conservative principles, fighting to restore economic growth, to defend free market principles, and to restore the Constitution. And I believe the fight to defund Obamacare between now and September 30th is the single biggest battle to improve the lives of hardworking American families that we can have in this country. And so that is my focus. I will say with respect to Barack Obama, I respect President Obama. He is a man who is profoundly committed to his principles. And he has demonstrated he is willing to endure criticism and pay a political price for defending those principles. That's rare in politics. There are an awful lot of people in politics in both parties who go with the wind. And I don't think President Obama does that. Now, I also think, and if any of you are going to run the first statement, I would encourage you to include the second part. I think the principles that he believes in are profoundly dangerous. I think he believes in all of his heart in government control of the economy and redistribution of wealth. And the problem is it doesn't work. And it doesn't work in particular for the people who are struggling. Under Barack Obama, Hispanic unemployment climbed to nearly 10%, African American unemployment to 14%. Youth unemployment, age 16 to 19, to over 25%. I think the ideas that he believes in are no doubt coming from good intentions, but they are failed economic policy that is producing stagnation and enormous suffering. And we need to get back to free market policies that work.
But his lack of experience wasn't the problem, you don't think?
I think the problem with the Obama administration is he embraces a view of the federal government that supports government control of the economy and redistribution of wealth. Under his leadership, we have seen $1.7 trillion in new taxes. We have seen massive regulation, just Obamacare. Just Obamacare. The regulations for Obamacare are over 20,000 pages. That's over 7 feet tall. If you're trying to run a small business, it's virtually impossible to comply with, as is illustrated. I mean, if you look at the past couple of months, we have seen the president of the Teamsters, James Hoffa, say that Obamacare is destroying the 40-hour work week that is the backbone of the American middle class. We have seen the IRS tax agents union asking to be exempted from Obamacare. These are the guys in charge of enforcing it. And then, most comically, we've seen Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats going to President Obama begging for an exemption for Obamacare for members of Congress because they don't want to suffer under the bill that they've given for the American people, and President Obama disregarding the law and exempting him. You know, that sort of favoritism of picking winners and losers, cronyism, illustrates just how badly Obamacare's going, and in particular it illustrates how much it is hurting if you're politically connected. If you're a major corporation, if you're a big CEO, the Obama administration will grant you a waiver. But if you're a hardworking American family, you don't get a waiver. And those ideas aren't working. We need to get back to the free market principles this country is founded on. The free enterprise system in the United States has been the greatest engine for prosperity and opportunity that the world has ever seen. There has been no country on earth that has enabled so many millions to rise like my dad from nothing to achieving the American dream. And that's what's being threatened by the Obama agenda and the Obama economy, is the economic mobility, the ability of those struggling to achieve the American dream to be able to do so. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.